I've done a series of videos on this handgun and I had to break it up because it's something new. There's a lot of things to talk about. I've gotten a lot of comments and feedback on this Kel Tec PR-5.7 pistol and its design and all this other stuff. But before we get into it, if you would please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and become a member if you could. Okay. So this gun here came out a year ago, and I explained to you in other videos why it took me a year to get my hands on one. Circumstances just in the gun community, But going on, this is interesting, and there are a ton of videos out there on this particular handgun and this new kind of loading system that they have for it, these stripper clips. A lot of people are saying that this is the gun to get, this is the one to have, and they're kind of pushing this. There's a lot of hype. And I've heard a lot of feedback. Okay, first of all, Kel Tec is one of these companies that it does have some distract. There's people that don't like Kel Tec firearms. Okay, dead much like there are people who don't like Taurus firearms. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's their opinion and they have their reasons. Okay. Also, Kel Tec, what they do is they try to do something innovative, different, and stay ahead in the market for guns, okay? So what we have to do is look at this pistol, look at what it is, and the caliber is the main thing here, okay? And what Kel Tec did to more or less outdo the competition, okay? So first off, we'll talk about the ammo, the 5.7 caliber. Been around for 30 years. Basically, this thing was designed more for a submachine gun. They said, FN made a pistol. They wanted a round that would fit the submachine gun roll or pistol roll and for soldiers and be able to penetrate light Kevlar body armor. And at the time in the 80s, that's what we wore. I wore them in the service, and Kevlar helmets were being issued to most troops. So they wanted a high velocity cartridge that could perform this. Now, in civilian life or defensively, the quality of this high velocity penetrating cartridge, to be fair, criminals do wear body armor. The chances of me running across this or running across criminal body armor are slim to none, but it could happen. And as our society breaks down, it could happen more frequently. So there is a plus, and I'll be open-minded to where this will be more superior to a 9mm, okay? Some say the cavitation and the wound effect, this bullet, when fired in a ballistic gelatin, will supersede a standard 9mm full metal jacket slug, which probably that's true, okay? The only downside is this ammunition is expensive, number one. Number two, it's lubricated. See, this is something, if you look at this, you'll see in the middle here, these are Fiocchi rounds, and however they're lubricated, or some say it's a lacquer finish, some say that they have a lubrication on it. The Fiocchi ammo, you can feel something slippery. They have a lubrication. The FN and the Federal ammo don't have that. So I don't know if they have a dry lacquer on there. It's critical that these cases are lubricated so they will reliably extract from the chamber. That's what makes them difficult to reload, is whatever the magic material they put on there, how do you do that before you reload it? So, and I have found not only with the other gun, the TS, and with this, for some reason I'll fire Fiocchi ammo in the gun because it's the least expensive and I have more of it. So I fire it. Then this time I went to FN. Last time in the other pistol I went to Federal, All-American ammo. And I'll load a mag, I'll fire the other ammo. Not a problem. Okay, then I go back to the inexpensive ammo, and the first time I load a magazine and fire it, and it happened with this gun also, and it happened with the TS, I'd fire it and the case would not extract from the chamber. I cleared the case and the gun fired the rest of the magazine without issue of the shell being stuck in the chamber. So I don't know. And like when I showed you these fingerprints, okay, leaving this here, and also these stripper clips, you know, 50% of your ammo is exposed. If you had a magazine fed gun, the ammunition, you know, with this lubricant or lacquer or whatever goes on there, would be covered and, you know, put it in your jacket pocket, a holster, or a clip carrier. Where this here exposes this ammo, you know, in your pocket, in your jacket, in some sort of a holder, the stuff is open. So it could be a negative in the design here and all this other stuff. Again, dealing with the ammo. Now, said guns in 5.7. I have not had a lot of experience with this caliber. Okay, it is light recoiling. Now, light recoiling guns or ammo, when they function, means you can keep the gun on target. It's easier to learn to shoot it, and it's more consistent, and your chances of hitting your target with practice are better than, say, a 50 Action Express, okay, where you fire 2 rounds and have to go lie down for a while. So that is one plus on this cartridge in these handguns. It is very light recoiling and works well. Now, what Kel Tec has done with this particular gun, why the stripper clips, why the rotary barrel, why, you know, no removable magazine. What Kel Tec has done is comparing this to a Smith & Wesson Ruger, FN, TIAS, and a PSA pistol. Okay, all of them are in the same class. All of these guns weigh, on average, 25 ounces. The Smith & Wesson is the heaviest at 26.7 ounces. Okay, this gun weighs 14 ounces. Also, all those other handguns, like the TIAS, they are pretty much, with detachable magazines, a full-size gun. Very large, kind of hard to conceal, you know, and bulky. They're like a service-size pistol. And that is because the length of this cartridge, okay, with a detachable magazine would make the width this longer, okay? And I've also found with my hand, those pistols, to hold them in a nice straight line is difficult. Sorry my battery ran out, but as I was saying, Kel Tec made a pistol that, compared to the competition, is smaller, easier for me to get a hold of and get the proper grip. This is more comfortable for me to shoot than the larger guns. Not because of the recoil, because of the grip angle and the length of my fingers. This gun is better. So when you look at this and everyone starts freaking out, well, what's this with stripper clips, rotating barrels like these guns from back around 1900, 1890s? Well, what they've done is, with the stripper clip system and not having a detachable box magazine, you made this grip smaller. The rotating barrel, when I field stripped it, it's just a very small metal plate, latches into this frame, polymer frame, and that unique pushing the trigger forward, it depresses the mechanism that locks into that plate. Also, the way that plate works is it has to recoil back a bit, push that plate. There's a mechanical thing, the rotating barrel allows the pressure to drop off, and you use smaller, dual recoil springs, which are smaller. These little horns is just like they lock into the front of the slide, much like a barrel bushing. That's the purpose of that weird stuff there. But that system makes the gun smaller and more compact. That helps. This thing has been designed from one end to the other to be small, light, thin. It beats the competition's pistols in this caliber, in that category. And this gun was designed for concealed carry. The sights, the 3-dot sights, are non-adjustable, but when you line them up, it was very easy at point of aim. You line the 3 dots up, line it up to the center of your bullseye, and if you do it right, get the control down, you hit. Now, trigger. Thing about this, and how you also simplify the gun. There's only 2 things you have to control here: the trigger and the slide release. There's no mag release, there's no safety. Why is that? The whole concept, and this may be a deal killer to people, is this is a hammer fired double action trigger. So the safety feature of this is just like carrying a revolver. You have this huge take-up. So if this snags on something or whatever, where if you got a hair trigger with 3-4 pounds, you put it in your pocket or it snags on something, it goes off. If you are not a fan of a double action revolver, and this is where your learning curve, you got to learn to shoot this gun, and there's a lot of unique things about it that are different than, say, most of your polymer striker fired guns. You got a double action trigger, so this is just like shooting a revolver. The reset is all the way out, so your finger must go all the way forward, more or less. It's different. Some people may not like that, but it eliminates any manual safety. I know a lot of people don't like a manual safety and that, but that is part of the design. This is why they did all this strange stuff, to end up with a compact gun. Now, the use of the stripper clips. For somebody like me, I have issues with my hand and manual dexterity. It does take some getting used to, but like I stated earlier, I don't like the ammo exposed. They say, oh, we'll throw, fill these up, throw them in your pocket. Well, reloading this and the way it's loaded is kind of awkward. It was very difficult for me. It took me a while to get used to doing it. So that can be a deal breaker for some people. And also with a non-detachable magazine, to unload the gun, you must manually cycle this. Say you put 20 rounds in, you want to unload it. You got to manually cycle the gun 20 times to get the cartridges out. Also, if there's a malfunction, clearing the malfunction is not as simple, depending on what it is, the misfeed, the jam, or whatever. You can't get the mag out, so you'd have to pull this back, push up on this slide stop, which does kind of have somewhat of a sharp edge. A lot of people complained about that. It does. And then you would have to, like what I had to do, is I more or less had to get my car keys and pry out the stuff to clear the case that was in there. And if you watch the video of me shooting it, you're seeing me do that. Which that in the fact that as far as malfunctions, I think I had 2 in the 50, 60 rounds. I have not put a lot of ammo through this gun because of the weather, cost, availability. I will go out, give it a fair shake, get some more rounds through it. But the 2 malfunctions, some people, that's a deal breaker. There was an individual that was going to do a 1,000-round test. I've seen a YouTube person doing a test of this. And what happened was they got to about 700 rounds, and the individual said, look, this is how many malfunctions I've had in the 700 rounds. I'm just going to stop at this point. And they did not give this firearm a good review. Kel Tec in the past has had trouble with some of their newer guns. This one here, the Kel Tec PR-5.7 is one of them. I've seen videos when this came out years ago, and there's 2 versions. There's this simple polymer one, and there's one with a metal frame. The more expensive gun, actually the guy was shooting it, and these things would fall apart while he shot them. Bits and pieces would come loose on them. So, but that one there, after 2 or 3 years later, the functioning on that was flawless. Okay, they must have re-engineered it or reworked them. This gun here had the misfeed like I described when I switched from one brand of ammo to the other. And then halfway through a magazine, I fired it and it just locked open like this. You know, nothing was jammed, nothing was hung up or out of place in the magazine. It just locked back in the middle of a mag. And while I was shooting, it kind of hung up on one. You can feel it. You recoiled, and it was like going forward, and it like caught on something and stripped the round in, so it was noticeable. I don't know if that has something to do with the magazine and the cartridges. You know, when you push them in there, the spring is binding or something and not getting them up to where, you know, the slide's picking them up or something. That I'd have to look into. So there was a few mechanical things, but I have not gotten a round count up to where I can say one thing or the other. But when showing this gun to my friend, he didn't know much about it. He carries a compact 9 all the time. He's a businessman. He always carries a gun. He kind of liked this gun, but the minute I told him there was a couple hiccups, for this person who is constantly carrying a firearm, you know, because he's a businessman, he just carries all the time, put it to you that way. He doesn't like that. He said, say you fired 3 rounds and this thing hung up. You got 3 rounds instead of 20. So some people like 100% reliability out of the box. Okay, we're going to run it some more and see. There have been several complaints where this gun jams an awful lot. Okay, more than a lot of people would like. The fact there's no detachable mag to where you can easily clear the jam kind of is a factor there. Okay, but on the plus side, this gun is relatively thin and light. It's lighter, you know, they've knocked 10 ounces off of the competition in terms of lightness. So yes, this is what Kel Tec wanted. I believe they achieved a somewhat smaller, lighter gun in this caliber. See, the caliber also is a problem on making a compact gun. These cartridges are long. They're lighter than a 9mm, okay, but the length of them is kind of an issue, and any of the handguns designed to use this caliber have that problem in terms of size because of the length and size of the ammo, not the weight of it. So, would I recommend buying it? And Kel Tec came out this year with the PR-380, I guess, where they're making this micro 10-round 380 pocket gun. They still sell the P380, which is a 6-round clip, single stack. Well, they're using the same design of a rotating barrel, stripper clips, and everything else to make a very compact, you know, just as compact as their other one. A little bit heavier, a little bit bigger maybe, but it holds 10 rounds of 380 instead of 6. So, and the guy did say the series, so they're going to make more of these guns based on this design, the rotary barrel, stripper clips, and also if you go, the stripper clip thing is kind of a pain. Okay, I had difficulty when you're using it, like I explained in the other video. You got to kind of rock back and forth and make sure you get the last cartridge in, or it'll fall out, or it may not seat right, and that will cause a jam. Okay, that can be a problem. So this thing is not the most, you know, you can get used to it with practice, but it's kind of impractical. There's something called, and I was watching a video, I didn't know this, and I'm not trying to sell this, and I'm not going to mention a price, but Bullet Buddy has some sort of a contraption to load this pistol. Okay, so what this thing does is it has a plastic chute, and I mean the whole apparatus is bigger than the gun itself. And that locks in there. There's a tab, you know, from the video demonstration. This locks in, and you take a plastic thing. You have to buy the box. They sell you a box. The loader and the little stripper thing are like, and you can get a 10 or a 20 rounder. They make a big 20 rounder. They're like 30 units for just the basic thing. Then you can buy the box. You need the box because you take this plastic strip it, pick up the 10 rounds, then you dump them in the chute, and then you take, you know, a heavy, good size heavy thing and put it in there and just push it down. It's opened, so you just push it down, and it's a lot more stable, and there's more pressure applied other than a flimsy little movable thing here, and it looks like it works. Okay, and they even sell a stand for this pistol to where you got a little 3D printed or polymer injected stand and do this. It makes loading the gun easier in a range setting where you're at a bench. Okay, it doesn't make loading the gun easier in the field using this. So, you know, that's something you got to consider. And again, like they said, with 20 rounds, do you need more than 20 rounds in a civilian self-defense situation? I guess the rule of thumb is it's, you know, so many yards and 3 shots. Most things from the police reports, it's 3 shots. Unless you're scared and just, you know, people do know they got 17 rounds, and when startled, they just start pulling the trigger and shooting until the gun stops. Okay, which, you know, nobody has control over fear. When you're attacked out of the blue, you don't know how you're going to react, okay, or what you'll do. But, you know, the convenience of being able to just pop the mag and throw another one, okay, out of your jacket pocket with this pistol is a lot quicker than trying to run a stripper clip down there. So, what does it all mean? Well, actually, with all the different, you know, the odd things in here, I understand why they did it. It did make a gun that stands out in its class. That I will say. I'm not a fan of the ammo. That's kind of like, for me, a deal breaker, and I'm not a fan of how this goes in with the fact that this has a coating on there, okay? The fact that another negative is you must manually rack this slide back to unload it is another factor. I don't like the double action trigger, the simplicity of use, the fact that it's basic, simple, the non-adjustable sights are right on. It has very low recoil. I can hit what I'm shooting at very easily, but also the way that disassembly where you push the trigger forward, if you screw up, like I said, and have this locked back, and if you inadvertently, like I was trying to, my hand slipped and I pushed the trigger forward, you can jam this gun to where it's almost difficult to get apart. It took me a while. I thought I was going to have to send it back to the factory, but then the slide did come off of it eventually and was kind of wedged and binding on itself. Because, you know, under the spring pressure, the gun is not to be released. That's kind of what I believe is a design flaw in this, which, you know, a lot of people would be embarrassed to say, hey, you know, I had it back, I jammed it, I didn't know what to do, and then, you know, you start freaking out and beating on it, you could damage the gun. So, in a way it's simple, but in a way it leaves the door open for somebody inexperienced or inadvertently to jam the gun to where you're kind of helpless and don't know what to do with it, okay? In a way, I'm kind of impressed, but in a way, with the hardship I had getting used to this gun, there's a lot, you know, and I fired a lot of different firearms now, but yeah, it took me a bit to figure out how to get this, and you gotta like practice loading it and getting it right, and you know, taking it down is fairly easy, but like I said, you don't want to screw up and do that when the slide's back because it'll jam up the gun. Yeah, it's a tough one. I got it. I'm going to shoot it some more, but you know, I explain things the best I can. If you know, your own personal choice, you don't like it and don't want to get involved with this, it might be difficult for you to deal with, then yeah, I've seen more kind of negative views on this than positive. Of course, you got people that say it's the greatest gun they've made in years, but for people, just the average guy, the average person, okay, that really isn't like a gunsmith or a weapons expert, this may be troublesome. Put it to you that way. That's my final call on it. This is something that somebody that's just the average Joe, it might be a little bit too innovative and different for them to use easily. All right, thank you, and stay tuned.